All right, live we are. Welcome back to the Nolecast. Ingram Smith, Bud Elliott. I am working from hotel Wi-Fi here, so I'll go ahead and throw a general apology out, so to say, or at least a acknowledgement that some of the production may not be exactly as you listeners hopefully come to expect from us. But as always, Bud and I are back again. This will be a game preview. Southern Miss. Bud is but it's as fluent as anybody out there when it comes to this conference. So I don't know that we necessarily need a guest tonight. Look forward to talking a little Southern Miss. We'll look back at the LSU game ever so briefly, just for any larger takeaways from it. And yeah, man, let's jump into it. And as always, we will thank our sponsors. I see my man Chad in the comments, and the legendary team of Chad and Shannon were with us in Orlando, have been with us for 5 years now, and have been with you, the listener, as they've done more than 500 loans. So 844 FSU loan, 844 FSU loan. As always, a shout out to those guys.
No doubt about it, man. Okay, let's get this read in within the first 5 minutes. The chat is asking for some prize picks. While everybody else gets in here, we will do our prize picks read. Of course, if you want to play some prize picks, promo code NOLECAST gets you that 100% deposit match bonus up to $100. Promo code NOLECAST on prize picks. Now, we have hit 2 25 to 1s this year, and people are buzzing about it on Twitter. I will let you all know that is not the normal expectation. I do not generally hit 25 to 1s on the regular. That's why they're called 25 to 1s. The six-pack flex, of course, is what I'm referring to, but we have hit a couple. I thought our Florida State stuff was really good over the weekend. I think I would play the Daniels stuff and the neighbor stuff again. I mean, the odds that Daniels doesn't throw 1.5 or more than 1.5 touchdowns are fairly low, but they did end up rushing the ball because FSU stopped them down there by the goal line. I have a couple plays for this week, so I'm going to go ahead and launch these out here. There are no Florida State lines up as of now. When you are a 31-point favorite over Southern Miss, you won't get your stuff posted probably until more like Friday or Saturday. But we will post an official Nolecast FSU-involved card for now. So let's just go ahead and give you guys, if you want something to whet your appetite, if you're looking to play maybe an early game card or something like that. Graham, you got your pencil ready? Going to write these down?
Yeah, I got it. Got it down. Absolutely.
All right. I can screenshot you what
I'll save you a text at 7:30 on Saturday morning. Be like, hey, how did just look?
what are we taking?
What am I doing?
no doubt about it. Okay. So here's a couple things. Marshawn Lloyd, over 55.5 rushing yards. That's for USC. They play Stanford. Stanford wants to play really, really fast, judging by the Hawaii game, judging by that coach's success when he was at Sacramento State. Yes, I did have to go through and figure out what the adjusted pace number should be for Sacramento State. Luckily, I just asked my buddy Bill Connolly. I was like, hey, do you have pace numbers on FCS? He's like, yeah. I was like, all right, can I just get the raw data on that? And I plugged it in my system, and there we go. Anyway, 55.5 feels a little bit too low, so I'm going to go with more than that for Marshawn Lloyd. Also think that Donovan Edwards for Michigan, over 89.5 rushing and receiving yards combined. They play UNLV. UNLV wants to push that tempo. I don't know if that's a great idea when you're playing Michigan, to give Michigan a lot of extra drives if your name is UNLV, but they seem to like to do it, so we'll take advantage of that if possible. Connor Wegman, Texas A&M quarterback, over 238 passing yards. I think Miami's got a pretty good front, and I think that their back end is not quite as good. Let's go ahead and pair that with more passing yards for Evan Stewart, 69.5. So yeah, that's those are related, obviously. And guys, pro tip on the prize picks: playing things that are related is a good move. Playing things that are directly like anti-related is not a good move, right? Like generally, I'm not going to bet. I'm not going to count on all of these receivers all having more than their things, because there's only a kind of a finite amount of yards available in the ballgame typically. Robert Lewis, the kid for Georgia State, the offense usually targets one dude. The one dude last year was named Jamari Thrash. We took his more in week 1 for Louisville, and that cashed us pretty nicely. But he's in that role now for Georgia State in that offense. Michael Pratt, if you guys watched the entire South Alabama and Tulane ball game, you saw him limping around something fierce. So I don't know that he's really going to have more than 32.5 rushing yards. Thus, I'm going to go under or less on that. And finally, Sam Hartman has thrown 6 career interceptions against NC State. He goes in there this weekend. I'm going to go with a little bit less than 240 passing yards for Hartman. I know that's maybe not the not the most popular choice there, but I think a little bit less, a little more run game for Notre Dame, maybe a little bit less pace. So those are some stuff. We'll put out the official Nolecast card coming up, and of course we will be using the Florida State game in there pretty heavily. But if you guys want to assemble some of your own this weekend, those are some things that have stuck out to me so far as they continue to add stuff. FSU talk?
Let's do it, man. Absolutely.
All right, man. Okay, so here's what y'all need to know about Southern Miss. Probably about 5 to 10 minutes worth of this. They went to a bowl game last year against Rice. I think their coach Will Hall, former Tulane guy, has done a great job rebuilding this proud program. They were pretty down in the dumps. It's a pretty under-resourced program. It's a Sun Belt school. If y'all don't know that, Florida State once played them. They had a guy named Brett Favre, and he had a pretty good day against the Noles about
33 years ago.
Yeah. Okay. There we go. So I think it'll go differently this time. They are pretty excited about this quarterback, Billy Wiles. I've read a lot of their message boards, listened to the coaches' comments, watched a little of their first game. He had a pretty nice ball game for him against the FCS opponent who they played. He's a Clemson kid, so he does have a little bit of pedigree to him, and a guy that is capable of making some throws for sure. So not like one of the worst quarterbacks you'll face this year. I don't think. At running back, they got a guy whose name I think most of y'all will remember, Frank Gore Jr. His dad, I was in school when his dad was playing. I did not really love facing his dad when he was at Miami, but obviously his dad, huge career. Frank Gore Jr. was a major part of their comeback last year. He actually he played quarterback for quite some time because they didn't really have a quarterback for many games. And he basically, they ran Wildcat like several games, but Frank Gore Jr. almost 1,400 yards rushing last year, added on another couple hundred receiving. He is essentially like their number one guy you have to stop. If FSU wants to get some nice reps of stopping the run, look, this is a good guy to chase. Let's make sure those pursuit angles stay fresh on the short week, and I'm sure that they will absolutely be trying to do so. Now at receiver, they do have one guy. Last year they had 2. So last year they had this guy named Jason Brownlee. He was pretty good for them. He's gone, I think, the NFL. But now Jacarius Caston has stepped up to be, at least as far as I can tell, a target share, and just based on what they did last year, kind of their top guy. So Caston is going to be the dude to watch for them. I'm interested to see just how much like Ronaldo Green and Ventrell and those dudes, right, get to play. And look at that. Greg was at the FSU Southern Miss loss with Favre at quarterback. Yeah, some of these dudes just like relative to the competition. I was watching some like Dan Marino clips today. Just amazing. The arm strength those guys had. So yeah, they kind of have one dude. I really don't think they have a ton else that you totally have to scare, but Southern Miss does get athletes. Like they're not a MAC school. Like some of these guys can actually run. Like, do they know where they're going all the time? Not always, right? But like sometimes they do. And so they're not like a guy, they're not unathletic. Now the O-line has been a problem for a couple of years. I don't think it's that much better. I'll also point out that this kid, Cole Cavallo, who is a pretty good tight end by Sunbelt standards, is going to miss the ballgame. So again, this may be more Southern Miss talk than y'all want, but I know a lot of our listeners are kind of diehard sickos, right? And they like this kind of stuff. D-line's legit, like literally legit. Now last year they were crazy aggressive. Austin Armstrong, the DC there, is now the DC at Florida. The guy who looks like He's younger than we are. He might actually be. I don't know how old he is. He certainly
sponsored by Mountain Dew and Adderall. Yeah. That opening press conference is just amazing. Incredible.
He knows a lot of terminology.
Yes,
I would say. He was born in 1993. So he is absolutely, like, not only does he look younger than we do.
Yeah.
Skincare routine must be really good on this guy. Like looking young, man. All right. Look, the D line is legitimately one of the better D lines you're going to see in the Sun Belt. They have, I mean, across the board, they're like 305, 260, 310, 302, 305, 295, like 280. So they're not like a school that's going to run out a bunch of really tiny guys out there that you just push around. Typically, they do have some size. I don't think that they're going to need to be quite as aggressive this year, honestly. And that's a need, but it's also just kind of a common sense thing. They lost this dude named Dalen Gill, who I thought was an absolute freak by Sunbelt standards last year. And I watched a lot of Sunbelt because I really I was pretty invested in Troy winning the Sunbelt last year. And so I watched quite a few Sunbelt games. And this kid, Dalen Gill, for them last year had a pressure rate of almost 20%, which is like otherworld. We talked about verse being like the low teens, I think. And I mean, if you're 20%, you're just way too good for that league. Played every snap for them, 671, 12 tackles for loss, 4.5 sacks. He's gone. So is Central Latham, another kid for them who was pretty good. They also lose 5 of their top 6 defensive backs. I don't think that Southern Miss can afford to be as aggressive this year, because, or at least not in this game. Because if you are, those new DBs are basically going to be asked to hold up in blitz coverage. Now, you might say, hey, I'd rather just give them less time and see if they can do it. But yeah, I think this defense does take a drop off this year against the top teams. It might be able to get away with doing what it wants to do against sort of like the bottom half team of the Sun Belt. But FSU is clearly not a bottom half Sun Belt team. They would be favored by a ton over all the Sun Belt teams. So, yeah, athletic team, a team that does have a reputation in the conference for playing really hard and physical. Like, they're not just going to come out and not care. Look at that revenge. Yes, let's get that revenge for that 89 game. I think in 89, I was getting a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles blimp because I had my tonsils out, and I remember like it was a cool toy my mom and dad got me. That was as a reward for getting the surgery.
I was still a year away from fandom. The first game I remember watching is 1990. My mom was dating this Gator guy who I used to go around and punch in the private regions for whatever reason you do when you're 6 or 7 years old. Just, felt it. But I remember watching that game, and I remember being like, okay, yeah, so this is the good team, and bad team's blue. And then next year you went up to Ann Arbor and watched that game, and I was hooked moving forward. But 89 is quite the interesting that we have as many attendees of that game as we do.
By the way, if you want some hilarious stories about kids and the Knowles, mine. Well, first, yesterday we had some major drama at the house because my 22-month-old, he was tickling my 4-year-old too much, and the 4-year-old decided that the appropriate response would be, were we on the phone at this time? I was on the phone with somebody, and I had to go to punch him in the neck, like just squared his ass up. I was like, okay, this is, damn it. All right, this is going to be like a cry. So like, hey, like too much tickling is not really like throat punching. Like let's the appropriate reciprocal response. So yeah, that was Adventures in Parenthood. But I did show Liam today, my 4-year-old. He wanted to ask. He's like, hey, can I watch videos on your phone? I was like, have you seen the cinematic recap that Florida State does? And of course, we've been having this whole thing. He's been rooting for mommy's team.
Yeah. Purple and gold.
She went to LSU, and he's like, yeah, let's see if LSU wins this time. I was like, oh no, this is not going to be good. So we had a little crying, not too much, because he's like, does mommy know they lost again? I was like, yeah, she knows.
She was.
Yeah, he's like,
too familiar.
He's like, number 4 is fair. I was like, yeah, he is He's very good. He's like, he eats his protein. He's like, right. Because it's been a whole thing. No, he's like, I want to eat waffles and not protein in the morning. We're like, you can have both, but like, we're not just gonna eat like a sugar bomb every single day before school. Anyway, yeah. So he does think that Keon Coleman eats protein, and I would agree. I think so.
Nice.
Like, yeah.
It would appear as though Keon has got a good protein source somewhere.
Yeah. So anyway, sorry, that's back to the. But yeah, we did a little crying, and then he thinks that LSU needs to eat more protein. So yeah. Okay, so I don't really want to talk about the Southern Miss special teams because, to be honest, guys, I didn't scout it. I feel like this is about as deep a dive as you want me to do on an FCS team. We'd probably just go like pure listener mailbag. Let's talk about what we want to see from Florida State in this game. Like, is there anything that they didn't do well that we want to see cleaned up? Are there any guys that you want to see rotated in and play more? Clearly, Miami's going to be counting how many snaps FSU plays with the true freshmen. So,
true freshman. I do think that's a theme. Absolutely. Maybe we'll have to do our own freshman snap count draft just to keep a running tab.
Let's propose something here. So, if all the Miami websites have a tracker, coincidentally, of course, right, that they're just tracking how many true freshmen played, should we invent one that tracks like games played by true, or I don't know, like games play like where true freshmen played more than 10 snaps against like Power 5 opponents with a winning record? Or like what the chat shouldn't give it a better name than that, because that's not a really great name on the fly. But what I'm looking for is a metric that shows like, okay, if you're a true freshman, are you actually getting to play against decent opponents?
Yeah. All I can think are acronyms that spell profanities directed at Miami right now. So that's not. I was like, freshman under count. Yeah, no, I shouldn't spell that out. But yeah.
Oh my gosh. Okay. Yeah, that was. Yeah. Snaps prior to garbage time. Okay. I like that. Snaps per games played. Because we really want to capture, like, are you getting to play against the good teams? Right? Are you getting quality reps? I don't know. Does getting in against Miami, Ohio matter that much? I don't know. Like, Florida State played its guys against LSU. That 75-yard touchdown was, I think, 2 freshman safeties and a freshman corner, right? So, yeah. Anyway. Okay, so obviously we saw Mo Smith bending over constantly on the sideline, and like we know, we mentioned this in the instant. Like, that guy gutted it out. He really did. You're a 31-point favorite in this ballgame. Is it the worst idea in the world to run some different centers out there to see who can work and get them like live reps in a ballgame? Whether that's Darius or whether that's Casey. I don't know. I'm throwing stuff out here. Like, trying to think of like guys who clear, like, no inside information here, but like from clear, like we saw it on the sidelines. The whole world saw it. Dude's limping around, gutting it out. Like, that's, I don't know.
Most tough as hell, definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you look at Mo. For me, it's you start on the interior of either side, Mo and Fabian. Do you need Fabian for more than? Do you need him at all? No. Would you play him for more than maybe 2 series? I don't know. I'd be interested in that. That's just a guy that you'll need him. You'll need him a full go in 2 weeks, regardless of what happened last Monday night. It'd be interesting to see how you kind of load manage in the meantime. And I imagine you'll want to, trend up in the Boston College game there. So, Mo, Fabian, I don't think there's anything wrong with Jared Verse, but I imagine that you're going to try to keep the snaps limited on him as much as possible. You do want to, you don't just want to run Bethune, Deloach, and Lundy into the ground per se, and you need to start to develop. I expect you to have one of those guys back next year, but there's a chance you could not have any of them. You need to start to develop next year's linebacker core. So that's interesting. And then the place where most of these freshmen are going to see snaps, I think we're in agreement here, is the secondary. I mean, look, dude, they hit with this secondary class. All of them are really, really impressive. Edwin Joseph, that's a super bright future, as did Conrad Hussey. And KJ Kirkland is one of the most impressive young men I've seen, and pretty damn good football player too. So like his long-term possibility. So yeah, I think the secondary is probably where you'll see it first. Maybe the interior, both lines of scrimmage, are where you would be, particularly careful with how much exposure you give these guys.
Oh, I should note, to the extent you trust PFF college grades, which I'm pretty skeptical of. Like, I think their NFL product is really good, and I'm not going to say that their college product is poor, but I do not trust it quite as much as I do the NFL, because I just trust the quality of person they have doing it more there. The interior of the Southern Miss offensive line graded pretty poorly against an FCS team. So obviously, like, if Fabian's healthy, he should play to get reps to stay in that sort of game shape. But if you have to play some reserves there in the interior, that's not necessarily the worst thing, and you'll probably have some decent success. I'm excited to see Byron Turner in this game. I mean, we mentioned the kickoff coverage. Dude, he was running down there in kickoff coverage, doing an excellent job. Like, just one of the first guys down there, hustling, blowing guys up, whether or not he made the tackle, like, he's blowing blockers up. So, pretty excited to see what he can do there. Offensively, with a completely new secondary for the Golden Eagles, I do think that you can definitely run by them with some play action stuff. And I would try to hit a shot or two to Destin Hill, because he didn't get he got one ball, I think, in the LSU game.
He got one target, if I recall.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, I'd like to see if he can get a chance to really go on one of those deep balls. That'd be cool.
I think I could see, like, I don't think Destin Hill is going to be on a point where he's appearing on a Prize Picks card, but I could see Destin Hill getting 100 yards receiving in this game. Yeah. You're going to want to work him, I think, and could be a big day for Destin.
No doubt about it. But I given that the run game was not in sync, I would expect a large dose of the run game in this one, because it's a good team to rep it against. I mean, if you could go out there and easy button this thing and let Jordan throw 30 passes in 3 quarters, it's an entirely rebuilt secondary for Southern Miss. But what did you learn? What did you cut these guys a check for, whatever, 1.5 or 1.7 or whatever it is for? Because they do have a pretty big defensive line front. If I'm Mike Norvell and I'm Alex Atkins, I'm like, hey, you know what? We're going to get some good work in here. Like, this is a front with some okay size to it. And they got some safeties that are actually, like, kind of thick. Well, let's see how well we block this run game against a very aggressive football team. It's going to give us a variety of looks on defense. So I would expect a lot of run game. Benson, Hill, maybe get a couple more guys in there as well. And then obviously some more rotation at receiver. Keon and Johnny had like 19 or 20 targets between them. So
yeah.
I don't think they're going to get 20 targets combined in this game, and really don't need to have it.
Yeah. I would consider almost taking the under on Keon, just because the stat is going to be inflated, and I just don't know how much he's going to play. Not that we're just going to do Prize Picks the whole podcast, but in general, there's a massive overreaction on week 1. So I would look at Travis Hunter's numbers, and if they're too inflated, I would consider going under there.
Well, especially because if Nebraska hangs around in this game, Nebraska will be playing with like a tempo modifier of like a 0.8. So like 20% below national average of tempo. Like, Nebraska will use every second, every single time.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Totally agree. The overreaction there could be big. You think Hakeem gets a catch?
Yes, I think Hakeem gets multiple catches. I could see that. Like, if you're already working that guy in the LSU game, I know the game was somewhat out of hand there, but Hakeem is. I think the last time I was at practice, Hakeem had put together a series of practices that were impressive enough that Norvell kind of threw his arm around him and said, like, that's what it needs to look like a great job over the last 2 or 3 days or whatever. And by all accounts, he's it just takes time, man. And that's why one reason why it's such a good thing to get these kids in as early enrollees, because I don't know that he scales up in the manner that he does right now if he's not here in January. So it's just an adjustment period, regardless of how physically talented you are or whatever else. And Hakeem appears to start to be making that adjustment. I think he could be heavily featured once you start to, pull off Kentron, Keon, and Johnny.
I also want to see some more of the backup offensive linemen. I don't mean like your top 7, but like I mean, do you think any of the young guys get a couple of reps there, maybe in that final quarter? Like that's good for them to rep against the defensive front like this. Like this is by Sunbelt standards, like a quality defensive front that's not going to let you just completely push them around. Now, I don't know if this team's crazy fast in the back end. So if you clear the front line, you may just be off to the races. And I would expect some explosive runs to pop, but you can rep a lot of your run stuff with a variety of guys, making sure everybody has their comfort level. I talked to a head coach the other day. I'm not going to say who it is, obviously. And I was like, all right, you guys got real problems or week 1 stuff? And he's like, I loved it. I was like, what? Because they didn't play very well. He's like, dude, we played 11 offensive linemen. We played 9 receivers. All these guys who tell me that they should have a starting spot, I got them in there early. Got to coach them hard. I like that they played poorly because now I get to tell them, hey, here's why you're not starting. Here's what I told you have to do to get back in there. And so, man, I bet you Norvell and those guys are loving the physicality of this Southern Miss defense because they're going to get to coach this offense hard for another week, as opposed to just easy button, Keon, which I'm sure they'll get 1 or 2.
Speaking of easy buttons, there is no greater, easier button when you go to Tallahassee other than just don't overthink it. Hit up Madso, hit up Township. I love Charlie Park. Going to go hit up the brunch for the first time this year on Sunday, and would encourage you guys to do so as well. Madison Social, more or less a Tallahassee institution at this point, but about 400 yards to my right and in the shadows of Doak Campbell Stadium, as we were fond of saying for all these many years that we've received the support from Matt and his team. So, as always, going to point out Charlie Park as Tallahassee's best rooftop bar, but you are not, you're not short on options when it comes to the great properties of the For the Table Restaurant Group.
Absolutely, man. Okay, so other guys that I'm excited to see if they can get in. I want to see Cryer, the Northwestern kid, if he can get in. I want to see if Nicholson can get some reps. Obviously, you already mentioned Lundy and Graham. If they can get some reps. All the young DBs, obviously, are certainly dudes that I know we are really excited to see. And all right, over under on the number of snaps in this game played by true freshmen. 75.
Over.
Ooh, snap call. Look at that.
Yeah.
I like that.
You might be able to get there by the third quarter, in my opinion.
That'd be huge, man. Get those guys the reps and get that load management in. I think we have a little bit of time. We're going to do some mailbag stuff, and I do want to discuss a couple things that we noticed with some of Florida State's opponents. So I guess I'll just kind of go down the schedule here real quick.
Let's do a 2-minute. I'd love for you to give us 120 seconds on Texas A&M Miami as well. Just
sure.
It's an interesting game that is a unique Venn diagram of interest for the Florida State fan base.
I like that.
And it's early enough that most of us will be able to see it because game don't kick till 8:30. So
8:30. We may really like this clock rule, by the way, in this 8:30 game. I have a feeling. Okay, so Boston College, they don't really have a quarterback. I think they're probably better along the lines of scrimmage than they were. But remember Thomas Castellanos, the running back? Florida State and Georgia wanted him. He wanted to play quarterback, so he went to UCF. Didn't totally work out, although I think he would have been the backup this year if he stayed. Now he's at Boston College. He took over in the second half, almost led them to a comeback win over Northern Illinois, but guys, they lost to Northern Illinois at home, and that's just not going to work, obviously. So really don't think that game's a major threat. this year. I mean, you smoked them last year. I don't think FSU was one of the games they thought they could win if they improved enough, but Castellanos appears to have won that job, just by my eye, at least. Clemson. Oh, well, I guess we do have some things to talk about with Clemson, don't we? They got problems. I mean,
yeah. Feels like this has been coming for a couple of years. Now that can be just a self-fulfilling prophecy. Whenever a team loses, you can talk about that, but there certainly have been signs that there are maybe some cracks out there. At the same time, all right. So, excuse me, bad radio. I saw where you said that your prediction is that Dabo changes his mind on the transfer portal. I think I mentioned,
or has his mind changed for him?
Yeah, I think they've already done that. I think they did that before last Monday night. There's one position in particular that I've heard a couple different, ideas about guys that might have Clemson in mind, which whatever. So I do think that there's an evolution there. I think at this point there's going to have to be, as you just referenced. I could see Clemson losing 4 games this year, man. I mean, I don't know. Maybe we're prone to make absurd takes, and whenever you have got a 1-game sample set, you're going to make too much of the 1 game. It's just how it happens. But it sure looks different, and you're only going to hit the generational quarterback lottery so many times. You had 2 guys in a row, 3 guys that were really solid, but 2 guys in a row that are as good of college quarterback as you're going to get. That just does not happen, and maybe that gives you some false confidence as to what you're doing with your program otherwise, and you think you have the ability to, get your pieces, keep your pieces, and turn them into an elite football program. And it certainly looks like there's been a evolution in college football that Dabo has not quite been on board with.
You don't think that getting like top 5 quarterbacks in the history of 100-year-old leagues is a consistent plan you can just hit on every year?
You can't just go to Cartersville and Gainesville, Georgia, every twice a decade and pull out 2 of the better guys to play the game. Yeah, no, it's interesting, man. I'll be watching culture stuff with Clemson as much as anything. I know that's kind of a soft factor type stuff that we don't talk about all that often on here, but just some interesting things going on there.
I'm curious as to how I'm not going to call it like a shtick, because it's not. Like it is who he is. I don't think it's fake. You can like it or not, but I do think he's genuine in what he said. Like I don't think I don't think he fakes it. Maybe you do. But I think he kind of believes it and breathes it. I'm curious as to how his methods play as the sport evolves. That's, I guess, what I'll say about that in terms of relating to players. Who else do we have here on the schedule who we actually learned something about in week 1? Okay, Vatek. I don't think they have the athletes on the defensive line to get enough stops against you. The passing game looks a little bit better because they have receivers, but again, they still have Wells as the quarterback. I really don't think that they're a threat as long as you play your C game. If you play like your F game or something like that, then it's an ACC team named the Hokies. Like they clearly, if you show up, you don't lose that one. Syracuse looked pretty damn good. A little better than I thought they would, actually. So you might be lucky that's in Doak, because that's a pain in the ass to play up there if they're actually looking good.
Mm-hmm.
Not lucky's the wrong word, but like in terms of the ones you'd want as far as home away breaks, Duke looked pretty good. But you basically run the same system as Duke, or pretty damn close on both sides of the ball, more so on defense. And you have much better athletes in the games in Tallahassee. But they do look good. Like you won't be favored by 28 over Duke. At Wake, I'm going to reserve my judgment here, but they did not look very good against Elon. So it's hard to repeat what they do every year, man. And they've had some injuries. I think the Donovan Green kid going down for them is a pretty big deal. Losing multiple like top defensive linemen to the NFL or to the portal. I could see this being the year they drop off a little bit. Pitt, I had a hard time figuring out how good that FCS team was, honestly. Like I don't really have much to say. Dracovic at least looks healthy. I did watch like a couple quarters of that. Miami is an interesting one. I kind of think A&M's a bad matchup for them. Right? Like Miami, I think their front seven is much improved. The Maui Noah kid they got, who's the transfer from Washington State, the brother of the tackle they got. I think he's a big help at linebacker. They have good safeties. Cam Kitchison and James Williams, who, to his credit, like looks like a linebacker, but still hasn't been moved to linebacker. So he's doing something right if he's still able to stay at safety, at least part-time in year 3. Longer than I thought he would be. Corners don't really impress me, to be honest. I think they're okay, but not like upper tier corners. And that could be a problem against A&M. A&M has, I would say, a no doubt top 10 receiving core in the country. They're very deep. The Noah Thomas kid they have looks really freaky. I think he kind of got dinged last game, so we'll see. Evan Stewart is freaky. Freaky. Like, yeah. I will say, I know a lot of people ask, like, do you think Jimbo finally gave up play calling? I do. Now they're running some of Jimbo's concepts, but the way they dress it up is 100% Bobby Petrino. You know how every time we played Petrino, it was like, okay, why is there like no safety on the TV screen as they run the post right over the middle? They're doing that. They're doing that thing. So it looks like Petrino. Now the tempo is still slower. Like they're not going no huddle. I would say offensively for Miami, there's more of a plan. The offensive line is definitely improved. The Mark Fletcher kid is good, but anybody who watched the state championship games knew that. Like he's legitimately a good back and will be somebody kind of be a pain in the ass to play for the next 3 years because he's a really good player. But we knew that. And you have good backs too. I don't think they have difference makers at receiver. I think they're better than they were just because they're all back, right? And you assume they progress in the system, but it's not like they went out to the portal and were able to find anybody there. It's like Restrepo and George and Young, and those guys are fine. Like they're not like an upper third ACC receiving core, I don't think. Although, shoot, with Clemson not doing much, maybe they are. I don't know about Van Dyke. I'm not sure I'm sold yet, to be honest. Like, I think the arm's there. The accuracy when he knows where to go with the ball is there. But I don't know if the knowing where to go with the ball part is there. If that makes sense. We'll see.
He got his patent, though. That's a big step.
His what?
His patent. He patented Tyler Van Dimes or whatever.
Okay.
Yeah. The important stuff. Yeah. No, man, I'm excited. I'm excited to see that. It'd be interesting to see. I mean, Jimbo, for some of the dysfunction that's there, that's still a absurdly talented roster. And tomorrow, when this airs tomorrow, Saturday, I know last week was great to have it back. Trademark, not patent. Sorry. No, you can't patent a name.
I was like, wait.
Thank you, Blue Chicken. No, I mean, this Saturday to me is kind of the first real, like, incredible matchup. 2 interesting games in almost every time slot. It's back, and it's going to be a hell of a ride here. And this Saturday feels like kind of the first one.
Hope you all got your farmers markets and your kids' birthday parties and all that kind of stuff out of the way, because this is definitely a park you're behind Saturday on the couch with multiple bangers really in each time slot. Kenny Gillingham, our old friend who's now the head coach at Arizona State, gets to face Mike Gundy, who is the head coach that Matt Rule said he most hated to face in when he coached Baylor in the Big 12, because he always thought Gundy had his guys really ready to go and did stuff that you weren't prepared for. So, welcome to Division I coaching, Kenny Dillingham. Here's your first FBS game. It happens to be against Mike Gundy. So that is tough, but they're only 3-point underdogs. So we'll see. Maybe they can. I'm certainly rooting for the Sun Devils there to pull out the win. North Alabama, I have no update on at all. I did see some tweets about him, but I didn't even save them. I meant to bookmark, but I didn't. Florida, I said this on Cover 3. Graham Mertz was one of the better players they had in that game, and that's a problem. I'm not sure this kid they took from Michigan is really any good, the safety, and that could be a problem. They got some young, promising guys on the roster, and we'll see. But they got to get the communication fixed on the offensive line. They could be a team that is like much better on the road than or at home than on the road, because like their communication issues on offense were crazy. They had like 4 or 5 false starts on 4th and 1. They had 2 special teams penalties that negated a change of possession, like including one that was they had double number on punt.
Yes. And they have like a special teams logistics instructor on staff, which, is like, kind of the
they have like a director of numerology, I'm sure.
What do you say you do here if that's your position and you've got that going on? Throughout 8, I think twice. I don't mean the number 8. I mean 8 people on the field. Yeah, I don't know, man.
Oh,
I mean,
I have the screenshot of this.
As you've said before, it is one thing to hire a Saban-like army of collared shirts. It is a whole other thing to know how to deploy them and to have the results that you want. Again, early, we're not going to make too much of one game, but there are some, for me, if I was a Florida fan, I would be concerned that I'm seeing some very giant red flags. So
yeah. All right. So see if you can see this. I'm pretty sure. Can I get this? Hold on. Let me see if I can show this. All right. I think I can show this. Can you count this? I'm just trying to make sure I got it exactly right here. Okay. Can you see that?
Yes, I can.
Okay. So that is that's the angle. Florida has 8 players on field goal block. You're right. Like literally it's I went and watched the end zone angle here is the end zone angle actually.
Yeah, it's it's stuff that if like a parent was leaving a middle school game, he'd be like, damn, the coaching staff just doesn't have it together. We had 8 out on the field. It's unbelievable.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. 8 players. They all had the same number.
They all had the same number. Dang. Yes.
You want to do some mailbag?
Yeah, we've got a couple of really interesting questions.
Nice.
Before we do, if you can continue to play tug of war with Maggie over your children's allegiances, I will be going to home field and sending numerous Florida State themed items down there to Orlando. Homefieldapparel.com. Legitimately some of my favorite clothing out there. I mention this, I know all the time, but I gave my mom a sweatshirt for Christmas a couple years ago. I've given my wife numerous items. I just love the clothing. They do have a new line of Florida State stuff out there that was released, I believe, last Tuesday. So do go give it a look if you haven't seen prior. But great friends there at Home Field. Coupon code is NOLCAST23 for a discount. I believe it's a 15% discount at time of checkout. Again, NOLCAST23. And a big thank you to our friends at Home Field.
All right. Mailbag. What do we got here? A couple from the Patreon, I believe.
Yeah, we've got 3 different questions. I'm going to ask if you'll read them tonight, only because I don't have the the multi-monitor
yeah.
thing
No
going on
problem.
right now.
All right. So Kevin asks, okay, here we go. Question that I'd be interested in hearing your take on. Well, you've come to the right place, Kevin. I've not screened these. So did you screen these or are we just reading blind?
I looked at them roughly. There's one comment.
Gonna have a Ron
here.
Burgundy moment here. Okay.
Yeah, right.
All right. If we have the year that I think we should all expect after that LSU game, and this offense continues to be an absolute problem, what are the chances we keep Alex Atkins next season? Is there anything we can do but keep him? I want to focus on what's ahead of us now and enjoy what we have going. But if the answer is no, we probably won't be able to keep him. Where can we look in order to keep this thing together? Yeah, that's a really good question. So I would say that Alex Atkins could have left last year if he wanted to, and that I think he is pretty well paid. If you finish with like a top 3 offense in the country, I'm relatively certain that you sign another very nice offensive line class and get credit for fixing the offensive line problem, which he does deserve. I think there's a pretty good chance that his compensation continues to go up. Like, a lot of people are probably pretty happy to celebrate Alex Atkins with the paycheck. As far as like jobs, you need to find the right fit. A lot of guys don't want to leave upper Power 5 to take a G5 job now, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Now, there are some guys who have done so, and they've worked really well. Like, look at Summerall at Troy. Look at Kane Womack at South Alabama. Those guys are going to get jobs, I think, and have done a really nice job with their program. But there are certainly other examples of guys who left and just couldn't get it together. I don't know what jobs in the ACC are going to open that you would want. Now that Atkins has had a taste of like big time recruiting and what it's like to coach like the most elite of players,
yeah,
some guys don't want to dip down. Like, and I certainly like one that initially I in my head connected with was Northwestern, because Alex is from Chicago, right? Pretty sure. Isn't he from Chicago originally?
I believe he's from around that way. Yes.
I mean, look, so Northwestern, if you get it, it's obviously extremely hard to say no to, because you're probably going to make like, I don't know, 6 or 7 million and set your family up like your kids are kind of set up if you manage that right. But it's also Northwestern, where you can't get transfers and you can't do this and you can't do that. So you really can't compete and win. It's kind of a paycheck job. Indiana could open. That's kind of the same thing, man.
Yeah. Illinois. You've got a loose grouping of those Big Ten schools that are challenging.
You get rich and you get fired.
Yeah.
Basically. So I don't know. Like, could Boston College open now?
Work in Illinois. I would think that might be a place that he could really do well. Let's see. I think Atkins is here for a little bit longer than maybe people would think.
Yeah.
Just because what we're saying, and people know that it's Mike's offense, but like, man, the turnaround that he's done at offensive line is incredible. It's going to open a ton of doors for him. And the more that he's here, I think the kind of what we're saying, the higher and higher level of head coaching job that ultimately he can project to. I think Alex, assuming things go well, will continue to get raises. He's a desirable commodity and has worked his rear end off, and is one of the recruiting dynamos on the staff. That's another thing that is going to be a challenge. Is it's a whole different game to recruit when you're the head coach as opposed to a position coach or now offensive coordinator. So people are going to have to. I'm by no means diminishing the man. The coaching job he's done at offensive line speaks for itself. No one's going to look at Alex Atkins purely as a recruiter. That's not what I'm saying at all. But that is an absolute strength of his, and that will weigh into the factor as to when he's ultimately offered a head coaching job.
Totally. The chat said, "What about SMU if they opened?" That, like, straight up, if I'm an assistant, that's a job I'm looking at. SMU just wrote a check for $200 million just to like survive in the ACC. And if you read Dellinger's story of Yahoo, basically, like, did you read it? It was
I think I knew the quote you're referencing. I haven't read all of it, but we need your help, and the first guy who opened his mouth said you got 250 million from me or whatever.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah, about wrecked my car when a friend of mine told me that story this morning.
Do you think SMU might have some quality NIL participation as somebody who is involved in the space?
I could see them evolving into a formidable player in the space. Definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There'll be a top half program in the ACC within 5 years, in my prediction.
Yeah.
I'm pretty confident in that. So, who knows? I just hope for Alex, like as a person and as a professional, that he picks a spot that, eventually he's going to go somewhere, right? Like he's not going to be here for 20 more years, most likely, although Mickey Andrews did, certainly. That he goes to a place he can win, and that, that is a place that if you do a good job, you can actually win. But obviously there's a lot of really good jobs out there, and I don't really know. Okay, question for the mailbag. What kind of odds are there, or are there any, that Darrell Jackson is cleared to play for the postseason? Follow up. If there's a shot at it, how wild would it be to see FSU and LSU rematch in the playoffs featuring Mason and Darrell Jackson? Hypothetically, how would that affect your feelings on who wins the rematch? Well, hypothetically, I would not be betting quite as heavily on the over if that were to happen, because both those guys are game ready. Like, we would not be predicting 38-34, I think, if Mason Smith and Darrell Jackson were in the game. I'll throw the first part of the question to you. Like, is there really a chance he can play in the postseason?
Yeah, I don't know. I'm hesitant to speak on this because people think that I know more than I do. There was a comment made originally that could be in play, but that needs to come from an official channel, not the Nolecast.
Sure.
So I mean there will be clarity will be provided on that. If you read the letter from that the NCAA released, it sure makes it sound like you're not going to be seeing Alex Atkins. You're not going to be seeing Darrell Jackson until next year, meaning like next season.
24.
So I will until somebody that's wearing a Florida State polo in an official capacity says that, I would operate under the assumption that he won't be playing this year at all.
They seem pretty hell-bent on this one, on this issue. If you saw,
they dug in in a manner that very honestly, very surprising to me, because a lot of different things going on, most notably, they need some political assistance on NIL reform. And I am a little surprised at the way that this thing played out based off that.
Exactly. All right. Here we go. Gents, question for the pod is from Matthew Leach, good friend of ours. At least 3 of this year's transfers seem to be guys that people are not just excited about, but really excited about. Like, not just good players, but potential freaks. I'm talking about Jaheim Bell, Keon Coleman, Darrell Jackson. And they all seem to be guys who aren't just refined players, but guys with incredible physical traits. Yet none of them was a really highly regarded recruit. Coleman was a low 4-star, 377 in the 24/7 Sports composite. Bell was a high 3-star in the composite, number 396. Jackson wasn't even a high 3-star in the composite, number 706. It's surprising to me that those guys with the kind of physical traits didn't rank higher. So what was it that they either developed or they missed about them in recruiting? I understand guys can get better, but these guys seem different because, as I said, it seems generally that recruiting rankings tend to reward guys who are so physically impressive. Thanks much. Hope you're both well.
Yeah, no,
that's a great question.
Matthew Leach is awesome dude, super bright. And always enjoy hearing from you. So thank you, Matt. Real quickly, before we get to his answer, I do just want to thank another Matt Lewis at Congruity. We saw Matt and his lovely family at the tailgate. CongruityHR.com have had a steady stream of inquiries based off getting in touch with Matt and see what's possible and how to better optimize your business. And if you believe that he may be able to do that for you, would encourage you to reach out either directly at congruityhr.com or feel free to contact me on some form of social media.
Absolutely, guys. That is awesome. All right. So I want to take these separately because actually a couple of these are guys I've had discussions with individually. I don't think Bell's ranking is bad at all. Right. He was Was he a tight end? Was he a receiver? He's not super tall. He's a really useful college player if he catches the ball consistently. But that was certainly an issue at times in high school, right? And I'm not going to lie to you guys. There are a decent number of dudes who look like Jaheim Bell. I saw him in high school. I thought he was a pretty good player, but the top 400 player in the country, there's a lot of guys who look like him.
I think it's a lot. And look, you're the expert here. In my opinion, when it comes to recruiting rankings, this is literally your job. I think a lot of it has to do with the position he plays, and it's real tough to be a super elite tight end recruit if you're not 6'6" or something. You've got to have the ability to project to the next level at a clear, first round type thing at tight end. So that is interesting on Bell. Kind of know the answer on Jackson. I am really interested on what you have to do with Coleman, or your answer with Coleman, but I think it has to do a little bit with basketball. And wasn't he an early commit to was it to Kansas, or where did he commit early to?
Yeah, there was a lot going on with his recruitment, right?
Okay.
And I don't mean that in a negative way, but it was just there were a lot of moving pieces there, right?
Mm-hmm.
One of which, like you said, was his basketball involvement. There were people who thought he was a better basketball prospect. I mean, he was 6'4". Now, I will say, Gabe Brooks of 24/7 Sports fought hard to keep this kid a 4-star in case he decided football was the main thing. And I am proud that 24/7 Sports was the highest grade on Keon Coleman, I'm pretty sure. So from that perspective, we weren't really an outlier. And I use we loosely here because I didn't work for 24/7 Sports. No, yes, I did. Yeah, no, it just started. Excuse me. If you got a guy who's extremely raw, but clearly has a lot of upside and has a lot of stuff going on, and you have people who think he's looking at schools who are going to let him try to play both ways,
Mm-hmm.
Kansas, Michigan State, that kind of thing. It's hard to use a super high spot on that unless you really think football is his main thing. Now, obviously, great for Keon that he chose football because there's not a lot of 6'4" guys in the NBA. But there are a lot of dudes who have similar physical skill sets in high school who don't make it. That's kind of how it is, honestly. Now, Keon, certainly a higher upside skill set than Bell had. But Bell was 6'3", 213 in high school.
Mm-hmm.
And what's he now? 245? And is Bell, I don't know if we have a real measurement on him, but is he a true 6'3"? He's, I guess we'll see what the NFL Combine says, assuming that he is. But I don't think that 4 stars on a kid, and this is something we probably need to do a better job of as an industry. If you're a top 400 player in the country, that's pretty damn good. I guarantee you, we have a lot of trouble sorting out who do we have to put outside of the top 247? Who do we have to put outside top 300, top 400? Mm-hmm. It's pretty fierce competition, and separating those guys often comes down to some of the non-physical factors you hear about too, right? Off-field stuff, focus. Is this going to be your primary sport? We've had kids before. I'll tell you, hey, this kid's a pretty cool tight end prospect. He's also a major NHL prospect.
Mm-hmm.
Where do you put him? Right? Is he ever actually going to step foot on a football field? Kyler Murray was a huge baseball prospect, but also, obviously, so a lot goes into it. Darrell Jackson, I think is actually a great example of a guy that, in hindsight, probably should have taken more of a shot on, potentially. But he was also crazy raw. Farmer was not super developed. And, at the camp side by side, dude, Farmer was worlds more advanced than he was. Darrell Jackson did not know how to play, kind of. I remember it was the Orlando camp that we went to. Shoot. I think might have been Lake Howell. A lot of these run together. He was just crazy raw. Trust me, if a guy that had that kind of wingspan had any idea how to play, he would not end up at Maryland at first, right? And it's just there's a lot of projection involved in this, but clearly his upside is and was huge. Hindsight, we can say that now. Should we have known at the time? Potentially, yeah, certainly.
Yeah, it's tough. Interesting to hear your thoughts on that. Like I said, you're as uniquely qualified as anybody out there to talk on the rankings process and how that works historically.
I love digging into these kind of stories. Like I always like, the dude who, who was it this year? I think it was Wake or the Old Dominion kid who went to Georgia Tech, who got drafted like second round. Oh, wow. Chiefs just dropped a wide open pass.
I know the guy that looks like a Alabama defensive end is what you're talking about.
He was in the choir.
Yeah.
He didn't play really like much high school football at all because he didn't go to any camps because he was doing choir stuff, like travel choir competitions. And then
that's awesome.
He walked on at Richmond. You know what? I'm going to mark it down as a miss, but I also don't know if we should refine our process.
Right. Yeah. Good luck. Tell me how you adjust that filter.
You remember Bryant McKinney?
Yeah.
Like for the chat who doesn't know, because we're old heads now, I guess. Bryant McKinney was like a 6'6", 6'7" left tackle for University of Miami. Played like a million years with the Vikings. Pretty good player. And he played like 1 year, I think, of high school football because he was like a saxophone player in the band.
Okay.
Like imagine having like a borderline Hall of Fame type guy in the band instead of on the high school field. Like it had to drive the high school coach nuts. There are a lot of fun stories like this almost every year because there's just so many people in the world. Guys are going to slip through the cracks. It's kind of fun.
That is, remember him all too well. That was one of the most dominant offensive tackles I've ever witnessed at the college level. So,
did he make the Hall of Fame?
Did he what? Did
he make the Hall of Fame? He played 12 years. It's pretty good.
Does not appear as though he's in the NFL Hall of Fame. He's in the College Hall of Fame and whatever Miami calls theirs.
I guess he wasn't like crazy good in the NFL. He made a couple Pro Bowls. All right, we're way off the rails here. Apologize, guys. He did win the Super Bowl and play 12 years, which is like extremely hard to do. Anyway. Yeah. Is Morlock more or less the same as Bell? How was he missed? I actually looked into this a little bit, and I don't know where my notes went to this, but when I looked at him when he was in the portal, I think he was just like really, really skinny and raw and went to like a crazy small high school. Right?
Yeah, he's from a very rural Tennessee, if I recall correctly. I believe that to be true.
I'll look up that. I'll look up more for that on the next show. What do we have here? College football recruiting anthropologist. Yeah, I actually do kind of find that stuff pretty interesting. Shorter had that NIL game in good shape. Yes,
undoubtedly. Yes,
there are certain schools that will kind of take a kid and hide them for certain periods. With the NIL. Oh man. All right. Let's see. Do we have? I haven't been reading the chat. Is there like some kind of debate about Mike Norvell leaving for the Alabama job?
People asked if Mike would be a candidate for the Alabama job. If Florida State continues on this trajectory for another year or two.
If your coach is seriously considered as a candidate for the Alabama job to replace the best coach in college football history, you know what that is? That's an awesome thing for you because that means your coach is doing one hell of a job.
Yeah. I mean, look, if Florida State wins, Mike's going to be a candidate for jobs. You just got to welcome that, embrace it, and be confident that you've done everything you can behind the scenes and otherwise to keep him in Tallahassee.
Yeah, exactly right. Cool, man. I'm not sure we were doing an hour tonight on the Southern Miss preview, but this was fun.
65 minutes. Thoroughly enjoyed it. So again, apologize if audio or video was not ideal at times. Working off hotel Wi-Fi and working off laptop microphone. So apologies there. Otherwise, thoroughly enjoyed it as always. We'll have an instant reaction podcast. Look, if this game doesn't end until 12:15 or something, it may be early the next morning.
I can go like live with coffee.
Yeah,
little pre-church reaction.
A little 7:30 review. We'll get you out something. Just may not be that night. We'll see.
Yeah. See y'all.